I'm Terry Kolath. I'm here today with Professor Adrian Kerr, and today we're speaking about the lost world of Atlantis. Professor Adrian Kerr is going to join us for a class and help us figure out, did it really exist? Thank you for joining us, Adrian.
It's a pleasure, Terry.
So, you're going to first set the stage, and then are we really going to find out if it existed?
Absolutely guaranteed. I know exactly where it is, and at the end I'll tell you where it is.
Okay, but you don't tell us today.
I can't tell you today.
Okay, so why is it so? Why are we so curious about this?
Over the thousands of years since Atlantis was first thought of, we've always admired great civilizations that have disappeared that perhaps had higher standards than ours. And it's always looked on as a superior way of living compared to what we have at the moment. That's how we tend to look at Atlantis, a perfect world.
Why?
I think that's part of human psyche. If you can't see it and it's not tarnished, then it probably was better. Okay. That's part of our psychological views. And throughout recent history, people have always associated Atlantis as being of a higher standard and a great period that's gone away. So, where did it come from? Plato, the great leader of thought in Athens around about the 4th century BC, explained in philosophy in the way that we appreciate better than reading a book. So he would actually narrate a conversation between two intellectuals who are talking after lunch, walking through a garden, discussing different philosophical ideas, whether it be the right type of government, or how to arrange taxation, or is this the best place to live in, and so on. And they would discuss it, pros and cons. And this is the original first mention of Atlantis came out of a conversation between two people who were discussing Athens and how did Athens come about. And of course they make stuff up, or it seemed to be made up, in that there's all sorts of interesting cross threads that these two people said, well, a papyrus was found, remember this is 4th century BC, so Egypt was well known. A papyrus was found which referred to a lost land. And the lost land was called Atlantis, based on Atlas, who was the great god. And the question of where Atlantis was sort of vaguely mentioned, and a description was given of Atlantis was an island which had 2 concentric rings, had a great port, and was in the lands of Atlas, which is the Atlantic Ocean. So somewhere west of the Mediterranean was the hint. It conspired to take on Athens, our city, and our gods, Athena. She actually condemned Atlantis to a watery death. And in a short period of time, she drowned it, and the island sank forever.
So let that be a lesson to you.
As a punishment to actually taking on Athens. So it's all Athens-centric. Yeah? Okay. Athens philosopher, Athens history, Athens is supreme, Athens is best. It didn't stop there, because the dialogue between these two gentlemen became compulsory. If you've ever done Greek, you have to translate these boring philosophical Greek papers. And this became, in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, it became the thing to do, was learn Greek and Latin, and learn from these philosophers by translating. And so a lot of people grew up with this story of Atlantis, and it began to form its own life. And the people of the 19th century, for instance, began to actually make suggestions of where it should be. The Swedes believed it was the foundation of Sweden, and all sorts of crazy people put forward suggestions of where it might be. There were great clairvoyants, like Sayce, who is probably the most famous of the 20th century clairvoyants, and he wrote a book. And that became super popular. And he said, they will come back. And he said that they are the originators of metals and lore, and they were the people who founded civilization. And he predicted the year they would come back, and we all waited with bated breath, and they didn't come back. Aww. In the Second World War, the idea of an Aryan master race was very popular. And so the Nazi government sent out expeditions to the Himalayas looking for Atlantis, hoping that they would be able to link the Atlantean master race with their view of taking over the world. Crackpot ideas, but they went on for 18 months, didn't find Atlantis. Huh. And then in the 60s and 70s, we got all excited and we started having comic books of Atlantis. We had novels of Atlantis. Of course, the great Jules Verne wrote about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and he showed his visitor wearing scuba gear the lost city of Atlantis. So from the 19th century onwards, it's snowballed into maybe it does exist and where could it be? So we will take you through a journey of where Atlantis could be, and then we'll finally just declare where we think it is and what happened to it.
So you'll have to join us. The class is on Monday, July 23rd. You can sign up right at the door.